There are moments in politics when everything shifts in an instant. One headline, one leaked report, one unexpected reaction, and suddenly the entire balance of power starts to crack. That's exactly what happened when Donald Trump, a man famously obsessed with loyalty, quietly signaled a break from one of his most dedicated allies, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. It didn't start with a press conference or an official announcement. It started with rumors, investigations, and a single explosive accusation that sent shockwaves through Washington. And as the pressure mounted, Trump's response surprised even his own supporters. But this story isn't just about a single controversial order. It's about the unraveling of a partnership, the panic behind the scenes, and a political storm that threatens to pull the entire MAGA movement into chaos. And what pushed Trump to turn against his own guy? The answer is more complicated than anyone expected. It all began with a report that sounded too extreme to believe. According to a leaked account, Pete Hegseth allegedly issued an order that stunned military analysts, lawmakers, and even members of Trump's inner circle. During a naval operation targeting a suspected drug boat, Hegseth was said to have instructed Navy SEALs to do one thing: eliminate everyone on board. The first strike hit the vessel, but the real controversy surrounded what came next. Reports claim that survivors ended up in the water, unarmed, injured, and clinging to what was left of their boat. And that's when the second strike happened. This wasn't just a question of military tactics. Legal experts immediately pointed out the obvious. If the allegations were true, targeting defenseless survivors would cross into war crime territory. Under military law, service members are required to refuse illegal orders. What was supposed to be a routine operation suddenly transformed into the biggest scandal of Hegseth's career. But what happened next would take this story to an entirely different level. As soon as the report hit national news, Senator Mark Kelly, the former astronaut and Navy captain, stepped in. He released a video that instantly went viral, reminding troops that they are obligated to disobey unlawful commands. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't partisan, it was straightforward military truth. But Trump didn't see it that way. Within hours, he lashed out. He called Kelly's video seditious. He suggested it was punishable by execution. Hegseth went even further, accusing Kelly of undermining military discipline and threatening to haul him into a military court. Kelly didn't flinch. He shot back with a response that echoed across Washington. "These are not serious people. We're defending the law. They're trying to intimidate anyone who speaks out." His words didn't just ignite debate. They exposed a political fracture brewing beneath the surface, and that fracture spread fast. The moment Mark Kelly refused to back down, the shockwaves didn't stop with Democrats. What truly rattled Washington was what came next. Republicans started speaking up, quietly at first, then louder, then with a coordination no one saw coming. Inside the Armed Services Committees, both House and Senate, something unprecedented unfolded. Members who had defended Trump through every controversy suddenly shifted their tone. They weren't dismissing the reports. They weren't deflecting. Instead, they were demanding answers. Republican lawmakers began calling the allegations serious, deeply concerning, and worthy of immediate investigation. Some went even further, stating the obvious. If survivors were intentionally targeted, it wasn't just a policy failure. It was potentially a criminal act. That kind of language doesn't come out of nowhere. It comes from pressure, from fear, from political calculations happening behind closed doors. Inside the GOP, two camps quietly formed. One wanted to protect Trump at all costs, believing the base would never forgive a public split. But the other camp, the one growing louder by the hour, feared something much bigger. They worried that if the scandal wasn't contained, it could snowball into a legal disaster, a military uprising, or a wave of resignations that could jeopardize the party heading into the next election cycle. For the first time in years, Republicans weren't aligning reflexively behind Trump or his chosen allies. They were aligning behind accountability. And that shift sent a message louder than any press conference. If even Trump's loyalists were stepping back, something serious was happening. The pressure was building fast. The party was fracturing. And the man watching all of it most closely, sitting, stewing, glued to coverage, was Donald Trump himself. What he did next changed the entire trajectory of this scandal. Up until this point, Donald Trump had been playing his usual role, loud, confident, unwaveringly loyal to the people he handpicked. And at first, he did exactly what everyone expected. He defended Pete Hegseth with absolute certainty. He insisted the reports were exaggerated. He said he trusted Hegseth completely. For a moment, it looked like the old pattern was repeating itself. Trump would stand by his ally, absorb the backlash, and try to bulldoze through the scandal. But then, something strange happened. During a brief press gaggle aboard Air Force One, reporters pressed him specifically about the second strike, the one targeting survivors in the water. And this time, Trump didn't respond with defiance. He didn't attack the media. He didn't call it fake news. Instead, his stance shifted, quietly, subtly, but unmistakably. "I wouldn't have wanted that," he said. Just 6 words, calm, controlled, measured. But those 6 words landed like a political thunderclap. For the first time since the story broke, Trump wasn't backing Hegseth without hesitation. He wasn't dismissing the allegation. He wasn't offering blanket protection. He was creating distance, a gap wide enough for plausible deniability, but small enough to avoid open conflict. And Washington noticed instantly. Commentators began speculating that Trump was laying the groundwork for an escape hatch. Advisors whispered about a potential break. Critics claimed Trump was preparing to cut Hegseth loose if the scandal grew too large. Nothing was confirmed, but Trump's tone told its own story. He wasn't shielding Hegseth anymore. He was protecting himself. And once Trump shows even a hint of uncertainty, the fallout always accelerates. Because in Trump's world, loyalty lasts only until the cost becomes too high. Long before this scandal erupted, Pete Hegseth was already one of the most polarizing figures in Washington. His rise to power wasn't traditional. He wasn't a decorated Pentagon strategist climbing through decades of military bureaucracy. He wasn't a quiet policy expert hidden deep in classified briefings. Hegseth came from cable news, a loud, aggressive, camera-ready personality who built his entire brand on being bold, confrontational, and unapologetically loyal to Trump. That loyalty was the reason he got the job. Trump didn't want a technocrat. He wanted a showman. Someone who looked strong on camera. Someone who could energize the base. Someone who understood the theatrics of politics as much as the mechanics of defense. And for a while, that's exactly what Hegseth delivered. But his tenure came with baggage. A lot of it. He'd already been under scrutiny for sharing classified operational plans in a private chat. He'd publicly mocked critics and veterans on social media. He'd clashed with lawmakers, including Republicans, who questioned whether he had the discipline or judgment to oversee the nation's military. Even inside the Pentagon, whispers circulated about his temperament and impulsive decision-making. Still, Trump kept him close. Because as long as Hegseth played the role of the fiery loyalist, his controversies only fueled the MAGA narrative. Chaos wasn't a problem. It was a strategy. But the boat strike allegations changed the rules. This wasn't a Twitter fight or leaked text or another round of partisan outrage. This was a potential war crime investigation. The kind of scandal that doesn't just damage reputations, it reshapes administrations. And suddenly, the qualities that once made Hegseth valuable became the very weaknesses that threatened Trump. Because a loyal soldier is useful until his mistakes become too big to hide. As the scandal grew louder, something began to shift behind closed doors. It started quietly, a few reporters hinting that Trump wasn't as confident in Hegseth as he once claimed. Then came the insider leaks, the off-record comments, the subtle changes in tone from people who used to praise Hegseth without hesitation. And soon, Washington was buzzing with a single question. Was Trump preparing to cut him loose?
None of it was official. No resignation letters, no dramatic Oval Office confrontation, no leaked audio of a shouting match. But in politics, the truth rarely arrives in a single headline. It arrives in patterns, and the pattern here was impossible to ignore. Suddenly, Trump's allies stopped defending Hegseth on television. Certain right-wing commentators began distancing themselves from the controversy. Even MAGA influencers, usually quick to shield Trump's chosen loyalists, shifted their messaging from, "This is all fake," to, "Let's wait and see what the investigation finds." That's when the speculation exploded.
Reports claimed Trump was furious about how the story made him look. Others said he felt blindsided. Some insiders suggested he believed Hegseth had dragged him into a scandal he didn't need, while his administration was already drowning in crises. And a few went even further, whispering that Trump had already started exploring replacements, just in case the fallout got worse. Again, none of this was confirmed, but the signs were unmistakable. The silence from Trump's inner circle, the sudden evasiveness in interviews, the way Trump's own language shifted from ironclad loyalty to cautious uncertainty. It all pointed to one thing: the distance was widening, and the break was coming. Because in Washington, rumors don't appear out of nowhere. They appear when the ground is already starting to crack. While the public focused on Hegseth's alleged order and Trump's shifting tone, something even more explosive was happening out of sight. Inside the MAGA universe, the movement built on unwavering loyalty and a unified front, deep fractures were starting to show. And these cracks weren't small. They were widening by the hour. On Capitol Hill, Republican lawmakers were quietly panicking. Some feared the scandal would snowball into hearings that could expose more internal chaos. Others worried about how suburban voters, independents, and veterans would react if the allegations proved true. And behind closed doors, aides whispered that the party was split between two camps: those who believed they had to shield Trump at any cost, and those who feared protecting Hegseth might burn them all in the long run. Meanwhile, inside Trump's own circle, the atmosphere was electric with tension. Advisors argued over messaging. Some wanted Trump to stand firm and defend Hegseth until the investigation wrapped up. Others insisted he needed to distance himself immediately to protect the presidency. And Trump, watching hours of cable coverage with growing irritation, saw his base reacting with confusion rather than loyalty.
Online, MAGA influencers were at war with each other. Some claimed the allegations were exaggerated. Others blamed the Pentagon. A few turned on Hegseth entirely, accusing him of dragging Trump into unnecessary chaos. Even conservative pundits began openly questioning whether Hegseth had the discipline to lead the military. For a movement built on strength, the internal fracture was impossible to ignore. The scandal wasn't just damaging Hegseth, it was destabilizing the entire MAGA ecosystem.
And if the movement was cracking, the question became, who would Trump sacrifice to save himself?
And that's why President Trump
As the pressures surrounding the scandal reached a boiling point, one reality became impossible to ignore. This wasn't just a crisis for Pete Hegseth. It wasn't even just a crisis for Donald Trump. It had become a test for an entire political movement, a movement built on loyalty, dominance, and the illusion of unbreakable unity. And now, that unity was splintering. Investigations were accelerating. Senators were preparing public hearings. Military officials were being pulled into private briefings. Every new detail added another layer of uncertainty. And with each passing day, the shadow over the administration grew longer. Trump's situation was becoming even more precarious. His approval ratings were sinking. Multiple controversies were circling at once. His political capital was evaporating, and he knew the danger. If the Hegseth scandal spiraled out of control, it wouldn't just damage his public image. It could reshape the entire landscape heading into the next election cycle. Meanwhile, Hegseth was trapped in a political no man's land. Too controversial for Republicans to defend openly, too valuable to Trump's base to fire outright, too unpredictable to trust. He was cornered, waiting for a decision that could end his career in a single afternoon. And the country watched as the tension built. Because now, the central question wasn't whether the allegations were true. It wasn't whether the second strike really happened. It wasn't even about who gave the order. The real question was far more explosive. Who is Donald Trump willing to sacrifice to protect himself? Whatever happens next, a resignation, a firing, a bombshell hearing, or something no one expects, one thing is certain. This story isn't closing. It's only entering its most dangerous phase.